Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Brad.
And I'm your host, Sarah.
And happy Remembering Resistance Day, everybody. We are here. We are back. We are excited. It is the second annual Remembering Resistance Day here on Friends of the Force and throughout the Star Wars community, and we are so excited. This is an event where we can all come together and celebrate the series Star Wars Resistance that came into our lives and left much too quickly, and keep the conversation alive, keep these characters and stories alive, because they are near and dear to all of us, to our hearts, and we miss it. This was an event that we started last year, mid-pandemic. We were super sad in our feelings. And what started as a couple of interviews with some of the cast and crew turned into this event, which is really exciting. And here we are again, celebrating once more. Sarah, how do you feel?
I'm feeling good. I'm just excited that we're back here doing this again and talking about Resistance with the people, because I feel like Resistance is just not one of those things that gets a ton of casual conversation in the fandom. So I'm glad that, we're just a little part of garnering some of that casual conversation and helping people who maybe haven't found the show yet to find the show. And it's always really, really cool when somebody sees the hashtag and is like, oh, maybe I should get involved in that. Maybe I should watch the show after all. And the answer is yes. If you are that person today and you just happen to turn on this episode because it popped up in your feed or your timeline or whatever, please do. Enjoy yourself. Have a little bit of silly fun and hop on the Resistance train. All aboard. Mm-hmm. Truly.
Resistance is more of a kid-friendly show, and I think some people tend to discount that right away and not watch it at all. But in reality, it has some pretty adult themes. It's very anti-fascist. It talks about ideas of hope and forgiveness and found family. All of those core themes of Star Wars are still baked into the show with a bunch of original characters, with a lot of silly fun, with some beautiful looking animation that is much different and also is more anime-like with the cell shading. So it's much different than what we've gotten or have been getting since the show ended. And that is what makes it really unique. So, again, give it a shot. Have an open mind with the show. If you didn't like it the first time, try it again. Because I know a lot of people who were watching it originally and turned it off and are now revisiting it and are like, wow, I was missing out. And that's really great to see, because people do revisit the show, whether it's the first time or the millionth time. So Sarah, why don't you tell our listeners what to expect from us, at least this weekend, and what we have released so far on our podcast feed?
Sure. So we like to overachieve because we never understand the assignment. It's really not in our DNA. So for this week, we have our episode about the shorts for Star Wars Resistance, which happened during season 1. We do a live commentary, and that's on the feed right now. We also have an interview with Sergio Paez, who is a story artist and episodic director for episodes of Resistance, and that was really cool to talk with him and get to know a lot more about the day-to-day of what it means to be a story artist and to get to work on Star Wars and all that great stuff. We also had an interview with Brandon Auman, who is the head writer and executive producer of this here Star Wars Resistance. So it was really, really quite a privilege to get to talk to him and talk about all things Resistance, the story arc, the inception of the show, how he got the job, Dave Filoni's influence, as well as literally so many other things. And then we have this episode, which we're listening to right now, which we're going to talk and look back at Resistance over the past couple of years. And then on our Patreon for our patrons, we are going to have our comics episode where we review Star Wars Adventures number 16 and 17, which are the Resistance comics.
Yeah, there is a lot to digest this weekend. Really fun. We like to just make it a whole weekend event. And I know there are a lot of other shows and blogs in the Star Wars community that will be doing content as well based around Resistance. I know Knights of Ren will be doing an episode. I know Hope from J Guys and Jedi is going to be doing an episode and maybe a blog post or something. So check out all the other fellow Resistance creators out there, because that's, this event is not just, even though we started the event and it's something that we're really proud of, it's also possible because of the Resistance community. So see what everybody's doing. Look at all the fun fan art, fan fiction, you name it. Everything that's out there. and you express however you want to share your love for Resistance, just make sure to use the hashtag Remembering Resistance, and we will try to retweet it if we see it come across our timeline. So very exciting.
Yes, and if you are listening to this on your podcast feed, but don't follow us on Twitter or on any social media, and you want to see what's going on in the Star Wars Resistance community, at Friends of Force is our Twitter, where we will definitely be retweeting, sharing, reposting, commenting, all of that stuff on our feed to share in the love of this. Because at the end of the day, it's really not about us. We're just glad to be a part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. So again, Remembering Resistance Day is happening right now, August 29th. So if you want to pause this episode and go tweet about it, do it, come back. And we are just here for some good vibes this episode. This is really just a conversation show about Resistance. And we are here to share all of our feelings, all of our hopes and dreams for the characters and the future of the franchise and like what could happen. You just never know, folks. You just never know. But Sarah, I would love to start with what this event means to you personally. You know, seeing what I would consider the relative success of the event last year and seeing a lot of the cast and crew tweet about it, post to Instagram about it, using the hashtag, getting the opportunity to talk to many of the cast last year, including, you know, Christopher Shaw and Josh Brenner, and among many others. What does this event mean to Star Wars fans and people who love this show?
Well, I'll answer kind of what it means to me and then maybe what it means to everybody else as best as I can. But Resistance and this podcast and ultimately this day is actually tied to one of the worst days of my life. And it turned that around for me in a really positive way. So as you all know, this is a pandemic. It's been going on for a hot minute and it's still going on. And the day that everything kind of flipped around and turned upside down and spun you in a couple circles and then punched you in the face, was the day that we were interviewing Tasia Valenza, which was our first Star Wars Resistance interview. And I was devastated that day for obvious reasons. I was a senior in college, and getting to do that interview really was the bright spot of my day. It was the most important thing I did that day. It was wonderful to hear her talk about giving great voice and having presence and all of that great stuff. And it kind of, everything, you know, snowballed from there to get to where we were. So, you know, the pandemic, especially last year, but continuing into this year, I think it's been really hard for me, for us, both of us. I will speak for you, sorry. Because I think it's true.
We share a brain cell, so it's okay.
We do. I mean, yeah. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but, you know, it's been tough for everybody. And getting to have this positive creative outlet where not only did we have the opportunity to talk to people that we really do respect and admire and appreciate their work, but also like really get to have a positive interaction with so many other people who also love Resistance. What an extremely special gift. Like, how lucky are we to even get to be a part of this? And to get to be here among all these wonderful people in fandom who are having these great contributions, big and small, to Star Wars Resistance, to the Star Wars community as a whole. So I don't mean to get sappy on it, but like, it's really special, and I'm very grateful because it brought me up during a really dark time. And I think for the community, especially last year, it might have also been that for them. It might have just been a way and a day to talk about Resistance with friends who maybe don't talk about it regularly. And it was a way for me to get to interact with a lot of people that I hadn't spoken with before. And so I would say that that's probably the experience of a lot of other people who participated in the hashtag on the day of. And I mean, that's really, really cool. It's very neat to have your world expanded just a little bit, you know, on all sides, and get to know some more people through a show that we all appreciate.
You know, we even talked to her about the pandemic. We were asked, like, one of our rapid fire questions was like, what are you doing to pass the time? Like, stuck in your home, you know? And so we were all in it together. And I think talking to a lot of the cast last year, I kind of got that sense of we've been stuck inside too, like actors. So for them, it was a little different, and they wanted that face-to-face interaction. So I think for them, it was really special. For us, it was really special. And then, yeah, to see the passion of fans online. I mean, somebody drew an entire map of the Colossus. I forget which Twitter user it was.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Literally my favorite thing in the whole world.
Like one of the coolest fan arts that I saw come out of the event last year. And I just didn't understand the sheer amount of people who were going to show up for this event and draw and create and podcast and write amazing stuff. And I was just like stunned by how many Resistance fans there actually were. And I think that's been the coolest thing, like you said, is to find those pockets of people that we now can relate to through our love for Resistance. And that's been really special. And I can't wait to see like what people are sharing today. If we still want Resistance to return in some form or fashion, which we do, you know, give us, even if it's not Resistance, quote unquote, season 3, I think there is room within the Star Wars sandbox for these stories and these characters to return. And it would be a huge wasted opportunity to not explore some of those people that were introduced in the galaxy far, far away, because there are just some amazing characters, and every voice behind each of these characters is super passionate about the show. They always say, this is like one of the best times of my life being on the show. And I'm like, that makes me so thrilled and so happy. Like, how does that not bring you joy as a fan of Star Wars? Even if Resistance isn't your cup of tea, which we should all be respectful to those who love Resistance. And like, let's not try to like poo-poo on it, because there are some naysayers that I've been seeing on Twitter who are being very vulgar and very mean about it. Listen, you don't have to watch it. Nobody's making you watch it. But like, let's admire the fact that people love the show dearly. And that's pretty cool. You don't get to find that too often with Star Wars, but when you find your thing, you champion it.
Yeah. And I think the point is, you know, if it's not for you, it's not for you, and that's okay. And there are obviously plenty of valid reasons why that might be the case. But at the same time, I guess this is just a general rule for all things. Don't QT somebody and then be like, it's bad, actually. It's just like, keep that in your own timeline. And that's okay. That's okay. Just don't rain on anybody's parade, one way or the other, you know? Yeah. Allow those parades to keep going. Who doesn't love a good parade?
Yeah, come on. It's fun stuff. But I'm so excited for the event this year. And if you're wondering why we chose August 29th, I know last year we were still wondering if Celebration was going to happen, and we found out it didn't. And then we were like, let's do something the weekend that Celebration was supposed to happen. And we found out coincidentally that the Meet Team Fireball video dropped on August 29th of 2018, which we will link in the description of this episode. And if you want to watch it, you can go back and relive that sweet, sweet nostalgia kick. And it just really worked out. I mean, it's working out this year. There's not really anything happening within Star Wars right now. Tempest Runner comes out in a couple days, so we're right in the sweet spot. But I want to go back to April 26th of 2018, which was when Star Wars Resistance was actually announced by Lucasfilm. And we have this quote from Dave Filoni, who says, quote, "The idea for Star Wars Resistance came out of my interest in World War II aircraft and fighter pilots. My grandfather was a pilot and my uncle flew in restored planes, so that's been a big influence on me. There's a long history of high-speed racing in Star Wars, and I think we've captured that sense of excitement in an anime-inspired style, which is something the entire team has been wanting to do for a long time." So this is really weird going back to this first article, but also kind of special. It's like that moment of lightning in a bottle. I remember seeing this image for the first time, you know, the ocean of Castellan with BB-8 in the corner, and just wondering what the show was going to be all about. And it just exceeded all expectations. I think it really is an acquired taste in some sense, because coming off of Star Wars Rebels, it's a much different tone. But again, at the heart of it are some really inspirational things. And the fact that Dave Filoni really wanted to try this new anime style TV show, which I think a lot of people were turned off by, but again, it's different for a reason. They're trying different things. They want to diversify their animation portfolio. And I think Star Wars Resistance really brought something that was unique, that we hadn't seen before, which is, I think, the most exciting thing about it. I just want to know from you, like, what was your first reactions to when the show got announced, and like, looking back on the show and like how it all wrapped up in 2 seasons, like how do you feel about all of it? And like, I don't know. How do you feel?
How do I feel? Well, it's interesting because as you were reading the quote, I was trying to figure out where I was, like April 26th, 2018. And I was like, well, I was probably in finals week. I probably had no idea what was going on in the outside world because I was like knee deep in essays. But I do remember seeing like the initial articles, and reading the news that we were going to get this new show. And I just remember really liking the logo. I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is cool. And I think a lot of the early assumptions about the show are that it was going to be really, really racing based, alongside the anime style. And I think people were like, oh, well, that's interesting because Dave comes from, season 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is also an anime kind of style of animation and
just
the
2D
energy. Yeah. Not exactly the same by any means, but kind of some of that energy. So I remember being very interested and curious, really liking the logo and being like, okay, we'll see how this goes. And then honestly, I remember watching the first couple episodes and being like, I don't know if this is for me entirely. Like, I don't know if I'm loving this. And as it went on, I just fell in love with it more and more. And then we ultimately were recapping season 2, which was delightful and ridiculous, and a good time. But, trying to place myself back in that mindset, because we're not post-Tross, but post-TLJ. Like, I'm living on the high of that, and then getting this new news that we're getting something set in the sequel trilogy era with new characters and stuff.
And right before Solo, like a month before Solo.
Oh, wow.
Almost to the day, yeah.
Wow.
What a time. What a time.
But yeah, I think thinking about it now, it just feels like it's been 100 years and it's been like, 2 months since that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because the passage of time has gotten very weird lately. But it's interesting to think that we've seen it come and go in that period of time. And now it's been so long since it's finished in a way. And we're like, wait, how long has it been?
Mm-hmm.
Because time is just weird these days.
Yeah. And when we were talking to Brandon from our interview, he said that the show was always meant to be a 2-season series. But, as they got closer to the end of the sequel trilogy, they started tossing around ideas for like what a season 3 could look like potentially. I really do wish the show had lived beyond the sequel trilogy, because one of the things I feel Star Wars is missing right now is an exploration of that time period post-Tross.
Mm-hmm.
Because, so much investment went into the sequel trilogy and all the characters and Resistance especially, and we really haven't explored that time period. I mean, all we've gotten since The Rise of Skywalker, I believe, is Poe Dameron Freefall, which is still a book that's set before The Rise of Skywalker, so it's technically not post-Tross. And I feel like the Resistance characters are would be such a good way to continue the story, because I mean, you have the Colossus, which is such a set piece, like a really memorable set piece. And you have these characters, and they can coexist with characters like Finn and Poe. They have been with Poe. He's in the show, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Rose, and even Rey, or like Maz Kanata, or Connix. There's so many different characters that you could bring into the series. And even if it's a new type of series, to just live and breathe in the sequel trilogy era, because I really do miss it. And I think getting this series finale for Resistance after The Rise of Skywalker, which, I mean, anybody who's listened to this podcast for a very long time knows Sarah and I's thoughts on The Rise of Skywalker. It's not our cup of tea necessarily. And for those that it is, more power to you. Wish I could match that. Getting Resistance after, like, kind of restored my hope of like, oh, dang, this is some really good stuff. This is really thoughtful, hopeful, uplifting stuff. And I would love to see those stories continued. But, we got the Siege of Mandalore after Resistance, a couple months after, which is crazy to think about. We've gotten the Bad Batch, which a lot of the Resistance alum came over to that show, including Jennifer Corbett. And now we have Star Wars Visions in just under 30 days, which is going to, again, be that sort of anime TV show featuring some prominent Japanese studios, which will be really, again, it'll be like a seismic shift culturally for Star Wars that we really need. And I think Resistance was that for quite a bit. So, like, how do you feel about the state of sequel trilogy storytelling as well as like Star Wars animation at this point?
Yeah. So I'll first say, like, Visions is not just an anime style, TV show. It is anime. It really is truly the full realization of that thought process and that influence. And, again, the energy that anime has, which is like fast and forceful and powerful and
just batshit crazy.
in the best way, right? I'm very much looking forward to Visions because that trailer knocked my freaking socks off. It was so cool. So I'm really excited to see the realization of Star Wars anime and to see how it all comes together, because even though those stories are non-canon, we're also going to be getting a little bit of post-Tross kind of storytelling through there, which should be fascinating. As for post-Tross storytelling at all and the state of it, it's very interesting because I think I both agree with you and I don't, that Star Wars Resistance should have continued past the sequel trilogy in the way that it was conceived. So obviously, yes, I want more Resistance. I love these characters. I live for them. Niku is my main man. Like I would not trade most things for Niku, right? But I wouldn't trade the ending of the show.
Right.
The ending is just so pitch perfect that I think it would have been a disservice to the story and to the fans if they had done that ending and then been like, okay, immediately we're doing actually a season 3. JK guys, we're gonna continue on. Just because for me after Tross, that ending was exactly what I needed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. Yeah.
And it was, and I watched it just before we started recording and I was crying because it's just so heartwarming and so special and so hopeful. And I really needed that. And I still need that, frankly, just in my own life to have some hope in the world, right? And people. So as much as I would love to see it continue, I think it would have to, one of those things that's like the whole show would have had to been restructured from the beginning in order to make it something larger than the 2-season story. Mm-hmm. And I think it could have happened for sure. But I also think that would have required a lot of cohesion in planning within Lucasfilm about like the end of the story of Tross and all that stuff and where they wanted to go past there. And I don't know if Lucasfilm is there yet. And that's not necessarily a dig, really at all. It's just saying, they have other avenues that they're focusing in, other stories that they want to tell in this moment. Clearly, we're really hopping into the post Return of the Jedi phase right now with shows like The Mandalorian and all of its affiliated shows that are ultimately going to come out. Also, we're getting some more prequel shows.
Post Revenge of the Sith. Yeah.
In between.
And pre Phantom Menace for High Republic. So,
yeah. So, like in between these breaks here. So,
yeah,
they're kind of building out that space in the universe. And I think it could have been really cool to immediately continue that storytelling. But I do ultimately think we will get it. It's just going to be a handful of years down the line still. And hopefully it'll be really great and we'll all be on board for it. Hopefully it'll be something that we love, Yeah.
I mean, they have to return to the sequel trilogy. And like, I say that as somebody who like dearly misses that era and that excitement, that just like aura of conversation around the sequel trilogy. Like I had been without Star Wars for so long, with the exception of Clone Wars. And I had grown so close to the sequel trilogy because it was like, oh my God, I'm going to be like in a theater, really truly experiencing it as an adult. And like forming new memories that are going to like stick with me forever. And that's really special. So, maybe a break is a good thing, but I do hope if we do return to this era that the Resistance crew, Team Colossus, like isn't forgotten in that equation. Because like, I think if you're going to tell stories about Poe, I think Kazuda Xiono should be there present somewhere, even if it's like in the background, even, whatever. And we'll get more into the future of Resistance and how that might look and what we want to see from it specifically towards the end of this episode. But I do think with the state of Star Wars animation in general, Visions is just going to be amazing. I really have so much faith in it because we're getting so many new creative teams involved with the series.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited for it. It'll be a breath of fresh air. And to also get something that kind of closely resembles the excitement and originality of Resistance, which I loved.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about Resistance itself and, what we remember from it. We're here to remember Resistance. So let's get into the actual plot, characters, story, all that stuff that really has a lasting impact on us and we haven't forgotten about it. So, so Sarah, I want to ask you first, like what still sticks with you? We're 581 days since the series finale of Resistance. What has stuck with you?
One, that is so many days.
It's a lot of days.
Secondly, Okay, I want to talk about some of the community aspect of this first. And I know we talked about the resistance community up top, but I want to keep on that train, because one of the things that has stuck with me still is the Skytalkers spaghetti.
Throwback.
Charlotte and Caitlin, I love you. So Skytalkers, if you don't know them, another literally best of the best, incredible podcast hosted by Charlotte and Caitlin. They also did resistance recaps while the show was airing. And one of the things that they talked about often was the Skytalkers spaghetti, and how, you know, it's the pot and the water is boiling and it's going to boil, and then we're going to put the pasta in, we're going to cook the pasta, but like it takes a while to boil. You know, a watch pot never boils, but this one is taking a while because that's how the pasta works. And I just remember, like, every time I would make spaghetti during this time period in season 2, I'd be like, this is a Skytalkers spaghetti. I even tweeted it like more than once. But I honestly thought that was so much fun and a great way to like view the show through, especially as it was going on and we didn't really know where it was going to end up. And I really appreciated their thoughts and their recaps every time, because it was always a good time to listen to them. Another thing that I think about during this time period was, Brad, how dumb we are as people. That both of us individually, it's our one brain cell that was working against us at this point, even though we didn't know each other, really. The fact that we did not go to the Resistance Season 2 panel and did not get many pictures of the cast at Celebration. Like, what were we thinking?
I don't know. We're clowns. Like,
I literally thought to myself, oh, I can't make it this year. I'll go next year for the Season 3 panel. Oh, womp womp. No, but like my biggest regret, because the energy out of that panel from so many of our friends who went was just like so much fun. And that double-sided poster that had the Season 2 poster on one side and then Oh Peep It on the other.
Wait,
iconic.
Oh Peep It was on the other side of that poster?
Oh Peep It was on the other side of the poster.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so upset. I watched that panel as soon as I got home. It was like one of the first things I threw on, and I was like, why didn't I go?
And we missed it.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
I just can't believe myself on that one.
I've already told you that if Celebration, they start announcing guests for photo ops and there's any Resistance people in there, I was like, I'm just going to buy the photos. We'll figure it out later. But like, just deal with it. I'm just going to buy every one that comes out.
Yeah, you better save some bucks to Sarah, because we're splitting them half and half. I'm like, okay.
Just us wearing our Bebo's book report shirts.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
Except I don't own one because I took it off TeePublic before I could buy it. TeePublic, what are you doing? What are you doing?
You should have owned one a year ago.
There's like 4 people that own the book report shirt. So for all of you,
it's me, Allie Andrews, Queen Allie Andrews. We have the same color and everything.
One of our patrons, Jess, owns the Bebo's book report shirt too.
Shout out to Jess.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Real rock stars here. But yeah, I regret this so much though. But again, I will say, like, watching that panel was very special. It's one of those things that I do remember, because I don't know if there was a panel for the season 1. So I think this would have only been the only panel for the show at a con. Maybe I might be wrong on that, but yeah, seeing the enthusiasm.
It was 2017 to 2019.
Yeah.
They didn't do one in 2018.
Right. So yeah, I mean, like, Brandon was on stage at that panel. We talked to Brandon. We've talked to a lot of the cast members on that panel. It's a good time. They were just so excited. Like Donald Faison and Bobby Moynihan running up and down the aisles. Like, good time, good stuff. Like, I can't believe they were just like kids in a candy shop. Essentially, they're like, we're in Star Wars. We're here. We have nothing to worry about. We'll just mess around and have fun. So,
I have a question for our listeners. Whenever Celebration ends up happening and it's safe for everybody to attend, like whether that be May or it not be May, you know what I'm saying? Can we plan a group cosplay, listeners, where we all just cosplay Resistance characters? I think we should do it. If you're interested in that, tweet me.
I've never cosplayed in my life. I'll try. Probably go with Oh Peep It.
That'd be great.
It's just a janitor costume essentially, which seems pretty easy for me. So I can get one of those. I can get one of those like floor sweeper things. Yeah, excellent start. So everybody, Brad is going to go as Oh Peep It. Yep. So that's a character already that's been nabbed. So get your characters in fast. Tweet me. I'm not even joking. I'm so serious. Like, you have no idea. Oh my gosh. I already mentioned on one of our episodes, I think it was our Patreon, we're going to walk into Denny's blaring the Star Wars Resistance theme by Michael Tavera.
It might happen.
With a boombox above our heads.
Yeah.
Bum, 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 give me them pancakes. Dun, 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 and waffles.
Oh, that was really good. That was really good. Yeah. So, okay. So, we already talked about what's happening in the community. Is there anything more that lasts for you about the community?
Yeah, I'll just say the passion from the creators and the cast. I mean, like every Resistance post on Twitter or Instagram is like shared by the cast or liked by the cast. And the fact that like, it just feels like this really small group of like, you had to be there sort of people. The other day I tweeted out how I really wanted to see Christopher Sean and Oscar Isaac in live action as Kaz and Poe together. And it got a lot of attention, and Christopher Sean was like, I'm all for it, you know? So just like that kind of, seeing that kind of thing makes me so happy. Because like there's these actors are still up for everything.
Yeah.
So that would be available to them to continue these characters. So it's really special. What a cast.
Yes.
What a cast.
What a cast.
Like,
what a cast.
The happiest cast around. Like between the sequel trilogy cast and this cast, like we've been doing good in Star Wars. Like we've had some great casts. And Rogue One, like and Solo. I mean, it's all been great.
We as fans have been very blessed.
Yeah.
Like just with a lot of cool people doing the Star Wars for sure. I will also say before we kind of move into the show itself, like another really fun thing that was fun to watch as it was happening and fun to continue watching. You'll see why in a second is Hope Molinax. She, would always talk about Resistance and have great commentary on the episodes. And now she's doing like a whole Resistance rewatch with guests on her podcast, J Guys and Jedi. And we joined her for Bebo, if you know us, obviously. And that was so much fun. We talked about like a 30-minute episode for 2 solid hours, and it was ridiculous and a delight. And so she's continuing to do that, her and Chris on J Guys and Jedi. And it's awesome that they are continuing to look through the series in such detail and with such joy in their hearts. And so that was fun to watch while it was happening, as well as now as it continues to happen. If there's anybody keeping Resistance alive, it's got to be Hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just love that there are so many people continuing to keep the legacy of the show alive, because that's all we can do. I mean, the show's over. We just got to keep talking about the characters. That's all we're doing. We're just here to remember it. We're here to think about it. And we're just here to show the creators that we still really care about these shows. And I love that there are just so many people that have that enthusiasm and that energy still, because that's all we need. You know, as Leia would say, we have everything we need from the Resistan community. And I'm just so happy about that. But let's jump into the show. Right. Let's jump into the show for a minute, because first thing I want to say up front, the visuals.
The visuals.
I feel like this is the most hotly talked about thing. Like there are some people who like strongly despise the visual look of the show. There are some people who are like, this is amazing. It's so different. It's so unique. I fall in that category. There are so many like establishing shots on the show, like with sunsets in space, with the Colossus. There are just so many moments on the show that I went, wow. Like you and I both watched the finale, rewatched the finale today. And like the one opening shot, like where all the Star Destroyers show up on Eos and start, you know, raining fire down on the planet, which was like crazy to watch. But, you know, there's the shot of like all the Star Destroyers like in the sky. And I was just like, holy crap. I was like, this is some powerful imagery for a show like this. And I think that really the show does a good job of like providing that scale and just like the levity of certain moments with the way that it's composed. And
yeah,
it just does that so effectively. And I love the show for that. It just works. It just works for me. It just works for me. And it might not work for everybody, but that's cool. But I love it.
You really get the vibe from the show that Castellan is a place where it would not be a bad place to spend your time, if that makes sense. Like, it feels like those vacation ads where it's like, come take a trip to this luxury resort where there are fine pools and that sort of stuff. Even when there's chaos going on in the galaxy and even to the Colossus and the people in it, there is this sense of tranquility, I think is the word that I'm looking for here. The sense of calm and peace that is evoked from this imagery, from the Colossus just sitting steadily in this water as it goes on throughout the entire horizon. And as remote as it is, and as that can be isolating, I don't think that's the tone that the show is trying to paint. And I think it does a good job in painting this sense of calm and peace. And that's why it becomes so dramatic when the First Order begins to invade that space.
Yeah, and I think speaking more to the visuals as well, like we mentioned up front that this was supposed to be a racing show, and like obviously it turned into much more than a racing show, but like the visuals too of the race, of the flight of these ships, and the way that like this is the only series where you have those like tails kind of coming off the ship, at least when they're on Castellan. And then even in the finale, like when you have the X-Wing, you have Team Fireball flying together, you have the pirate ship together going up against these massive First Order Star Destroyers. Again, the scale of the show just continues to increase with each episode. And like by the end of that, you're just getting something so big and so monumental. You feel small with the rest of the Team Colossus crew. You feel like you're a part of the action, but that you can make a difference. And having Niku and Doza on the bridge as part of this larger battle, it's just like, I'm just so amped from watching the finale earlier again. But I think just, again, the visuals with the story, with the characters, because your visuals will never make up for your story. If your story is not there, the rest of it falls apart very easily. But the thing that works with Resistance is it is a beautiful show with beautiful characters inside and out. But speaking of the Colossus, Sarah, let's talk about the Colossus for a minute. What do you think about this ship?
The Colossus?
Yeah, the Colossus. And
we're talking about the Colossus right here, right? Like the Colossus? Yeah.
And like, why haven't we got a cross sections for it? Like in a book, like a 10-page fold out, and also like a body pillow of the Colossus. Like where is that? I will GoFundMe for it if or Kickstarter, whatever we need to do, I'll do it.
And then we'll ultimately make 10 of them. Like one for you, one for me, one for our like 5 Resistance friends, one for Caitlin from Skytalkers, like, and then that's it. The Colossus, queen of my heart. No ship is as cool as the Colossus. Sorry, Millennium Falcon. Millennium Falcon, who cares about her? The Colossus, however, I'm obsessed. I'm overwhelmed. Like, what a stunning setting for the show to be in. Not only is it like an interesting community with Aunt Z, with the Gorgs in the marketplace, with Team Fireball and Yeager, and the Dozas and the Aces, but it's also just a gorgeous, amazing, huge ship. And it's so cool when it takes flight and we finally get to see the scope of it all. And like, nothing in Star Wars is that cool. Nothing in Star Wars is that cool. That is as cool as it gets, except for maybe Visions, because I mean, I think I've previously said that like Visions is the coolest Star Wars has ever been, and we should just all Star Wars should be Visions. And I stand by it. However, the only thing that comes even close to that is the Colossus and Rose Tico, of course. Okay, that's it. Okay, I'll stop talking now because but the point is the Colossus is so stunning, and you're right about the cross section. I think we'll be asking about that forever.
Right. But
like what I would do. And also a huge shout out again to that person who made the Colossus map last year, because like, wow. Yeah. That was a real winner. That was so freaking cool. We should find that and retweet it and link it in our description. Because now we've talked about it twice. But I mean, like, what an amazing place. And it just, it feels so different than a Star Destroyer, which is maybe of comparable size, because of how it's done vertically instead of horizontally, and how our characters live and work and play within that space. And it's just very cool to see how it all comes together throughout the show.
It's easily the coolest Star Wars ship, like hands down.
That's what I'm saying.
You know,
that's what I'm saying.
I think the greatest thing about it, my last point here, is that it is full of life. You know, it has a marketplace. It has the turtle shell folk underneath, right? It's just so alive. And I love that by the end of it, like every citizen of the Colossus is defending this thing with their hearts. Right. Yeah. And they are coming together as one. And the last point that's made, it's not Team Fireball, it's Team Colossus. That's what Aunt Z says. And that is so cool to show this is more than just a home or a place. It's a family, and we are going to protect our family no matter the costs. And I think that's one of the ultimate messages of the series by the end. And, you know, part of that moment too in the finale is Tam, her being welcomed back to the Colossus as her home. And, I love when she asks Yeager, permission to come aboard. I cry every time because she thinks that, why would anybody want me back? But Star Wars is about forgiveness. It's about forgiveness in a heightened way, right? Because a lot of things that happen in Star Wars that are done by villains are very extreme. Like, nobody in our world is going to blow up a planet or those sorts of things, right? But Star Wars is trying to fundamentally teach us about really simple lessons like forgiveness and compassion and all these things that, like, hey, like, people do bad things sometimes. Some are more cataclysmic than others, as Niku says, but it's about moving beyond those mistakes, not forgetting them. It's like, that's Yrica Quill's story. Yrica Quill kind of closely mirrors Tam a little bit in some ways. Tam's not going to forget the fact that she joined the First Order for quite a bit. But it's not going to hold her back forever. Cause what's the point of life at that point? And so I think there's so much beauty in Tam's redemption arc that she is able to have those final moments and everybody's so excited to see her and have a drink together in Aunt Z's bar and hug it out. And like, that's why the end of the show is so uplifting. Like, what are your thoughts on Tam's redemption arc and that true happy ending for Resistance?
Yeah. I think like my one thing is I wish we had gotten more Tam throughout season 2, but it doesn't even matter at the end of the day because that ending is just so perfect, especially in a time pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? When we are such, and not even having to do with Star Wars, whether you love Tross or hate Tross, whatever. But we were in a time where we were in such dire need of hope. Maybe for ourselves, maybe for the world we lived in, maybe both. And the end of the show really evokes that in such a beautiful way. And the music at the very end where it's very peaceful and hopeful, but quiet. It's not bombastic. It's not over the top. It's just very present and momentary and lasting at the same time, if that makes sense. But this ending really just speaks to the way that we as people ought to hold forgiveness in our hearts. And we don't have to forgive everybody that crosses our path. We don't have to forgive everybody in the same time frame, that the Colossus crew did for Tam. But we ought to have it in our hearts to be able to forgive if that's the path we choose. And we ought to be able to extend that feeling for others, for those who deserve it and those who we know, will be able to learn and grow from that as well, as much as the person forgiving will as well. So it's so beautiful to see everybody welcome Tam back into their arms. And I just remember Niku, like I also watched this and of course Niku, but he's like, oh, Tam, it is so good to see you. The mechanics, we have so much work to do and it was so much more efficient, with you here. And he's like, and Tam apologizes. He goes, we all make mistakes. Some are just more cataclysmic than others, which I thought is hilarious. But, they have a wonderful hug. And what he realizes is that his friendship with her and their teamwork together is what's most important to him. And he's willing to look forward and look forward to that teamwork again. And same for everybody. Vanessa Doza welcomes her back and Kaz welcomes her back and everybody does. And I think it's a really beautiful way for her to accept that forgiveness in her heart and recognize that, yeah, she's made a mistake, but she can also move forward and be better. And like, I think it's positive for everybody, those who are doing the forgiving and those who have made the mistakes. And, I think that's really beautiful. And I think we need more stories like that because there's a lot of hate in a lot of people's hearts. And we ought to be better than that.
Yeah. It's much easier to hate than it is to love and forgive. And even George, thinking about George Lucas's goal with Star Wars, I forget the exact quote, but he said, Star Wars is about loving people, That's all these stories are. It's just about loving and caring for one another and hoping to build a better community and better galaxy, right? And that's something that he hoped could be brought into the real world. I mean, Star Wars came out during the Vietnam era. here it comes a young student from USC saying, why don't we just all love each other? Like, why don't we stop fighting? Right? Like, why don't we put down our weapons? Right? It would have been so easy as soon as Tam came on board the Colossus to, point their guns at her and say, you're under arrest, you're treasonous, you're a traitor. But it's much harder for them to say, like, we forgive you, right? Kylo Ren, I think, one of the reasons I'm so upset that he passed away is because we didn't see the person he could become, or the way that other people could treat him. Again, Star Wars is not reality. It's okay for fictional characters to forgive a fictional villain. And I would have loved to have seen how tough would that have been for like Poe and Finn and Rose, all these people to forgive Kylo Ren. Maybe not forgive Kylo Ren, but to accept him in some sort of way, similar to like a Zuko character, right? I mean, even when Zuko came to the Avatar and said, I want to be your firebender teacher, Katara's like, no way, we're not having that. You're not accepted here. You did some bad stuff. And it takes her a couple episodes to warm up to him and ultimately be allies by the end. And then they're lifelong friends after the events of The Last Airbender, right? So those sorts of stories are so much harder to tell because it really makes you question and think about, like, where do we draw the line? And how do we forgive people? And that's just a beautiful thing. And that's why I loved this show, because they were so ready to bring back Tam. And for much of that episode, Yeager and Kaz are fighting along with her. So it's much easier for them to see her true motives do align again with the Colossus team and with her old friends and family. And that's what she says to Tierney. Like, Tierney's like, what did I not give you that they gave you? And she's like, a family, right? And that's just so beautiful.
I want to just touch again on the point that you made, that it's much harder to forgive somebody than it is to, be mad at them or hold that grudge or take them into custody or whatever. And you're right. You're right. And I understand the reasons why people may not want that story for all the stories that they get, especially when if you're thinking like, well, stories really impact our world and really impact us. And the answer is yes, like stories impact us. There's no doubt about it. And there are stories that have really impacted our world. I think that's also quite true. And for me, though, I really feel that there's been so many stories lately in the past 10 years or so that are just kind of brutal. It's like character, dead. Character, dead. Character, dead. Redeemed, no. Actually evil. Or I'm going to kill off this random side character, like just out of the blue. And it's done in a way that's very gruesome in a lot of stories. I think this especially kind of happened within the dystopian, YA dystopian thing of the 2010s. I think that's where that kind of stemmed from, because I don't want to spoil the end of the Divergent series. But the moment book 3 was told in 2 perspectives, whereas the other 2 were not, I knew something was up. And I was right. So there's this sense that so many stories have not had the imagination to hope and the imagination to look towards a more forgiving and caring future. And I really appreciate that this one did. And I understand that probably part of that was the fact that it is a show that's geared towards younger children. But that's also such an important message for us to have as adults. And I feel very grateful that message, it felt like it came at just the right time for me, as I mentioned earlier, for me, and I know for so many others. And then revisiting it during this pandemic where it felt like the wind was just knocked out of me over and over again because of what was happening in the world. Mm-hmm. It's still still a very healing ending for me. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I think that's how all endings should be in a lot of ways.
Yeah, especially in fiction, because that is it is an area where we can, especially in fiction, because it is a place where we can really put down the weight of real world situations for just a minute and like just get back to the basics of like basic humanity.
But the point that you're kind of hinting at here is especially in our speculative fiction, where we're getting stories that are not taking place in our real world, but are reflecting something that we're seeing in ourselves, and they're trying to tell us something that we need to hear. Yeah, that's where those sorts of stories are really important, and why I love speculative fiction so much.
Yeah, we're getting really into the thick of it here, Sarah. And I think we should go turn our attention towards the more lighthearted aspects of Resistance. So let's talk about Niku for a second. We had a whole...
my boy?
We had... Our series is named Bebo's Book Report. The series art by Mariana Avila is wonderful. It's Bebo, and he's being held by Niku, and they're both reading Little Women because they have taste. Sidebar, Little Women by Greta Gerwig is one of the best films of the year 2019. Anyways, I digress. So, Niku,
Can you tell that inspired the art?
Yeah.
Can you tell?
I think that's actually when I did it.
You probably can't.
I think I had just bought like Little Women on digital that week, and I was like,
that's
I gotta do it.
100% what happened.
Yeah.
That's 100% what happened.
So, Niku Nirvana is our segment every episode that we did on Bebo's Book Report, and it was when we talked about a moment where like Niku just made us achieve enlightenment, and he is just one of those good-hearted characters, much like you feel like is Rose, the good-hearted engineer in Star Wars that doesn't have force powers, but makes a difference with their optimism and enthusiasm. And I think Niku is that character because you need a dash of that in these situations when you're being chased by the First Order. And and that attitude that like nothing can go wrong, even though things are going wrong. And it provides for some really great comic relief. But that's what I love the most about Niku is he's so wholesome. He's so authentic to himself. He doesn't change the way he is for anybody or anything. I love in season 2 when he wants to be a pirate so bad. And he has the moment when he, puts the coaxium together and like, that's his shining moment. He has some really great heroic moments, Blowfish 1, Blowfish 2,
oh my
etc.
God.
So just I want to hear your thoughts on Niku as a character.
Do you really want to hear my thoughts on Niku as a character?
Okay, the condensed version of...
okay.
Because we could do a whole episode on Niku, probably.
Multiple episodes.
We're going to go through...
We can do what Skytalkers just did with Kenobi for Niku.
Our Niku summer series.
Our Niku summer series. Knowing Niku. It even works. It even works with the case. And the ends. So, Niku. What's not to love? Truly, what's not to love? Niku is somebody who is just so kind and good and selfless and has such a big heart. And I think those are all qualities that we can strive to have. And so I was immediately just so endeared to his character because he's just so honest and good. And, sometimes he's a little unaware of the jokes being made at his expense, but he will never stop loving. Nothing can make him truly stop loving. And even when Nina betrays him in The Engineer,
Nina.
I think he still truly feels for her and truly wishes that she felt differently about her situation. There's just something so radical about him. Like his radical compassion for other people is so perfect to me. And his joy and optimism, enthusiasm are all things that I strive to have in my own life and love to channel through him. And I strive to be as good as a friend as he is. Honestly.
Yeah. He's got a good heart. And I love how he's always wanting to be Kaz's best friend. And I'm just like, that is just, gosh, how could you not love Niku? And I feel like the hatred that is out there for Niku is like the same sort of hatred that people have for Jar Jar, which is just totally misplaced. And we love Jar Jar at this house. Jar Jar's great. Don't disrespect our boy. He's just trying his best. I know he gave emergency powers to Palpatine. I know he did that. It's fine. It happens.
Hey,
it created the Empire.
We're practicing radical compassion right now. We're going to forgive him for that.
Forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think they're kind of similar characters in some ways because they both want to see the best in the world in some sense.
Yeah.
And the way that Jar Jar's like, Annie, welcome back. That's Niku. That's Niku being like, Kaz, hello, Kaz. Just that enthusiasm is just unparalleled in any sense of the word. So it's just wonderful. Niku is a great character to Star Wars. Where is my Niku Funko Pop? Where is my Niku Black Series action figure? # release the Niku merch. Lucasfilm. I will give you every dollar.
The way that I would break my own rule to buy that Funko Pop. I would break my own rule for Niku. Just want you to know that.
Back at the summer convention called FunCon.
I can't believe that was the actual name of that thing.
I know, it's ridiculous, but they released the Imperial Super Commando Funko Pop from Star Wars Rebels. So never say never, because Star Wars Rebels came out like 3 years ago.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. So who knows?
Funko, if you're listening to us right now, you know what to do.
You know what to do.
I will literally send you my address if you just want to make one first for me.
Just make one. All right.
But no, Niku, he's just the best. And his moments throughout the series, I think we could go through all of our Niku Nirvana. Like, we had one every episode that he was in. So there's a true bright spot in every episode because he's there.
Yes.
And I hope that his story or mentions of him continue in other Star Wars stories, because other Star Wars stories also deserve that bright spot.
Absolutely.
But not only Niku, there's other bright spots in this series. And I think we could go on all day, but we probably shouldn't for the sake of our listeners, because they have other episodes and to listen to, Brandon Almond interview, and things to do today in their personal lives, and using the hashtag Remembering Resistance. I'm sorry, I had to plug it. But really what I'm here to talk about as well are the Dozas. We have Captain Doza. We have Tora Doza. And to complete the family set, we have the mom, Vanessa Doza. And they're all alive and they're together, hugging each other at the end of this series. And when I tell you that was so revolutionary in a freaking Star Wars, I really do mean it. And I don't know why it is so revolutionary. Like, it should, like, this, the fact that moms are dying all the time, they're absent moms. I have no idea why this is a thing in Star Wars. Like, I don't get it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. Where are the women? I will probably never get over it. But that's what makes this so radical and so revolutionary within the realm of Star Wars, is the fact that I don't know if I can name any other family unit that truly, like them, is all together at the end of the big battle.
Even Hera. I mean, Kanan died, right? So
yeah.
I mean, Star Wars animation wise, that there's one that didn't make it. There are a lot of great love stories. Like, love is a central component of Star Wars. And
absolutely.
The episode Rendezvous Point, with when we first meet Vanessa, is the first episode that I cried for Resistance. Like, actually, like, welled up in tears, because I was just like so moved. And I was like, who the heck directed this episode? And it was Bosco Ing. And I was just like, Bosco, you're the best. You did the thing. And I followed all of his work after that. I became a Bosco loyalist with Rendezvous Point. Bosco, come on the show, please, if you're listening. That episode like changed my perception of the whole series. I was just completely blown away. And then Bosco also directed the episode Rebuilding the Resistance in season 2, which is a Vanessa focused episode in some way. They go to, I think it's, they go to Dantooine to rescue some pilots. And Vanessa's involved, and that's when she comes back to the Colossus and hugs Emmanuel and hugs Tora. They have that one moment where Emmanuel kind of laughs and, like, you know, like fixes his hair, or I think Vanessa fixes her hair and Emmanuel is like, ha 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 ha, you know, like, there's just like a little bit of flirtation that happens, and they hug it out, and they're just such a happy Star Wars couple, and I love them for that. And I really want more from the Dozas. Like, I think a Vanessa story is warranted at this point. I would personally love a Lost Stars Vanessa falling in love with Emmanuel, opposite sides of the war story, and Emmanuel's like, I'm gonna drop this Empire shit because, like, that girl's kind of hot. I got the hots for Vanessa. I'm gonna leave the Empire.
That's exactly how it goes. It's really not deeper than that. He's like, she cute though.
She's really cute.
She's really cute.
So, like, I just love those types of stories, and I feel like that would be really awesome. That's my number one story that I want.
I imagine that it was like my parents. My parents, like my dad had to move because of this job fairly early into my parents' relationship. And my mom like just sat him down and was like, are we serious about this? Because if we are, I'm coming with you. And like, aww, they've been together ever since, you know?
Love that. So
I imagine it's kind of like that. Like he sits down and they're like, are we serious about this? She's like, yeah. Like, okay, I'm leaving the Empire. Bye, peace.
and also the importance of mother-daughter stories in Star Wars.
Oh my God.
Myrna Velasco, who voices Tora, on May 10th, 2020, on Mother's Day, she tweeted out some of the projects that she was involved with, and she said, all these wonderful mother-daughter stories I get to be a part of wouldn't have been possible without you, Mama. And she posts, the first picture on there is a post of Vanessa kissing Tora Doza's forehead. And I'm just like, this means so much to people. Like the fact that we get that mother-daughter story in Star Wars, because we don't have many of them, and I wish we got more of them, but I can't think of many others off the top of my head, Sarah. I don't know if you remember any, but...
Oh, gosh. Not off the top of my head. I know that there's the deleted scene where Padme goes back to her family home, but it's so minimal and it doesn't actually exist in the movie. So.
Well, I guess from a certain point of view, I mean, like Rey and Leia is a mother-daughter story, you know,
in a way,
you know, we're Reylos. She's her mother-in-law technically because she's married to the ghost of Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo. This is now 16 candles.
Well, she's a motherly figure to everybody she comes across, you know. Yeah. And so she kind of exudes, especially in the sequel trilogy, that motherly energy towards the whole resistance. Mm-hmm. So there's a bit of that there, but no, like, you know, blood mother-daughter relationships where we have an alive mom who is a mentor and a friend and a parent to a daughter. And I can't believe I have to say it.
Omera in Mando.
Omera.
We do love Omera. She's great.
More Omera, please. More moms.
Omera and Winta. Great characters. Love The Sanctuary. Bryce Dallas Howard, get her more Star Wars, please. She's directing Book of Boba Fett episodes. I just gotta say, can't wait for those episodes to blow my socks off. Anyways,
but like, okay, kind of back to the thought of mothers and daughters. Yes. Women are here, but like women have always been here. Women are the reason you're on the planet today. You know, like women are integral.
I laugh because I'm thinking back to Little Women where Saoirse Ronan just goes, women.
Anyway, women.
Women are great.
Like, they've been here. They've always been here. They're the reason everybody's here. And yet they get dust in Star Wars. And even though Vanessa is only in, I believe, 3 episodes, very slim number, she has such an impact because her presence at all is such a breath of fresh air. And the fact that she's so caring and nurturing, and that that Emmanuel and Vanessa have this story that is so star-crossed and faded, and also but just so loving and caring and kind. Like, give us more of that in the Star Wars, because the characters in the Star Wars deserve that, and we deserve that too as fans. And so I hope that the story of the Dozas gets continued in some way, because there's so much story to tell, whether it be backstory, whether it be the future. There's story to tell. And these characters, you can tell by just the short time that they have together, that they have a loving, nurturing relationship. And that is so important to show on screen, if you ask me.
I just want to hear Captain Doza go, punch it 4D, like a million other times. I should make that my ringtone when somebody texts me. Punch it 4D.
That would be, every time I text you, just get punch it 4D, and then I send 8 texts in a row. She's like, punch it 4D, punch it 4D. I'm like, Sarah, stop thirsting over Ben Barnes. Like, calm down, send it in one text. I'm just here to roast myself, really.
Yes, that's why we're here. This is the roast episode. Anyways, we should do one of those where we just roast each other for like an hour. Anyways.
But except it's like, because we're just so self-deprecating humor, we're just roasting ourselves the whole time.
On our own Star Wars takes.
Okay, yeah. We'll do that. That's very funny. Right. Anyway, talk about characters.
Yeah, speaking of lifelong friendships, like you and I, Flix and Orka. Although
you mean lifelong
are
space
husbands.
husbands? Yeah, I mean, they're going to visit Flix's mom like every other episode. So,
so
they're married.
So these two characters are wonderful. They are hands down the best Star Wars couple out there. So back on an episode of Coffee with Kenobi, Brandon Auman, Athena Portillo, and Justin Ridge, who are all executive producers on the show, confirmed that that's the case, because Justin Ridge had said, quote, I think it's safe to say they're an item. Absolutely. They're absolutely a gay couple, and we're proud of that. We love Flix and Orka. One, I wish this would have been confirmed during the show. But I will say it is amazing, at least after the fact, to get some sort of acknowledgement. And I think they just have such a loving relationship, and they're so chaotic. And we talked about this.
They are the most chaotic.
On our shorts episode, there's a couple of shorts focused on Flix and Orka, which you should definitely watch them, because it really puts on display the true maniacal nature of each of them and the way they laugh and the way they're just meant for each other truly. And just Jim Rash and Bobby Moynihan are you couldn't pick two better people to voice these characters. I do love Flix and Orka, and they're just so different, but I just think they're such a welcome addition to the Resistance cast.
And then we get the episode from Beneath, where we're getting more of the Gazo and like his family and all that good stuff. And like, that's such a great episode.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
It's so good. And also I love just getting to see more of these creatures, because a lot of these creatures that we see throughout Star Wars, we get once, and then maybe like in 15 years, they'll show up again in another piece of media. And you're like, oh, that's the same creature as that guy in the cantina, you know?
Right.
But the fact that we got so many of like Flix's people and family and his culture, even a little bit, like what they do on the day-to-day, all in this one like episode throughout the series was really, really cool. And gosh, you're so right about their chaos. You really are. And I just would want to, like, what I would give to be a fly on the wall at acquisitions. Like, can you imagine? I just would love to watch their banter throughout the day as they like receive new inventory and stock it.
Yeah.
And are like, this is out of place. And he's like, no, it's not out of place. I put it there. And he's like, you moved it 2 inches to the right, you know, like, and they're just been like bickering. He's like, I know you put it in that place and that's where it's supposed to be. And he's like, that's not where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be on the shelf below. Like, can you, like, I would just laugh all day because I think it would be hilarious.
Yeah.
It'd be like me and my friends working at the bookstore, except cooler.
Yeah. As we move into some of the funnies of Resistance to close out our discussion.
Yeah.
They are definitely a part of that. There's so many funny moments. I think From Beneath is a great episode, and we do get to see more of the species and them all kind of being like, you're back, you know? It's fun. It's a fun moment. But I think a couple episodes before that, the Hunt on Celsor 3 has one of the best lines of the show.
All right.
And that is when they take down the Jakkusk, and Kaz goes to Tora and goes, it looks like the Jakkusk got jacooked. And he like does a little finger, the finger thing. Guns. And she's like, oh my God, are you serious, Kaz? It's just like, that is the best joke on the show, hands down. I love it. And Christopher Sean's delivery of that line is perfect. So great moment.
I also feel like I need to say it one more time just so we both get our moments to shine while impersonating. So let me, listeners, let's
Rewind
go through the joke one more time. Ready? Hold on. Looks like the Jakkusk got jacooked. Finger guns. It's just so good. And I probably also, like Tora, like totally rolled my eyes when it happened. I was like, this joke is ridiculous, but it's lasted.
Yes.
It's lasted because it's hilarious.
It's chef's kiss.
But you know what it's not? It's not a Cast-tastrophe. The way the show is airing, I was like, I hate it every time this joke appears. And now I'm like, Cast-tastrophe, excellent joke, 11 out of 10, would recommend to hear again.
Which I think of the episode Kaz's Curse, when, you know, they're playing a betting game and Kaz gets cursed, and the one guy, I forget what his name is, but he keeps calling Kaz a Cast-tastrophe, and Kaz is just like, he just can't catch a break no matter what he does. And I love that episode's really full of Cast-tastrophes for sure, because everything that can go wrong does go wrong in that episode.
Well, I think that Hype is the one to give him that nickname first.
Oh, yes, I think so.
Because we talked about Hype banter in our Shorts episode.
Yes.
Because Hype has got some, he's got some good moments here.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So another really fun joke, and I'm not going to get the joke right, because I was dumb and did not find the exact language prior to this recording. But that moment in, I believe, season 2, when it looks like Tam and Niku had a secret language that they would use to talk in over the walkie-talkies to more or less talk crap about Kaz. Aww. And they're like, it wouldn't be a secret language if you knew about it, you know? Like... But like, I can't believe that they came up with their own lingo, essentially, to be like, well, Kaz is a terrible mechanic. And it's funny because I think that really shows the relationship between Niku and, you know, Tam, and the friendship that they had, you know, prior to Kaz coming in Kaz coming in like a wrecking ball and bringing the First Order to their door. And I say that in the nicest way. Like, Kaz is lovely, and I really do love his character. But, you know, his appearance definitely caused some ripples, especially for Tam. So, but to know that they had this whole thing going on, it's very funny to me. Remains very funny to me.
It just speaks to the close-knit community that has formed on the Colossus. And that's why I really love the Colossus as a place, because it is off the beaten path. It's a place that the thing about the Colossus, like once you find it, it's like a Margaritaville almost in a way, because, you know, once you're there, and you're having fun. Oh my
God. I can't believe you're like, you know what the reference I'm going to bring up today? Margaritaville.
There's a Margaritaville in my mall, so it's been a minute since I've gone there. But it's a good place.
There's a Margaritaville on Navy Pier. That's the only one I've ever been to.
Speaking of Margaritaville, there are fish on the walls at Margaritaville. I'm pretty sure, or at least paintings of the fish. And
that brings us to Bebo.
Yeah, that brings us to Bebo. Well, Bebo is definitely great. And Blowfish 1, Blowfish 2 in the season 1 finale is phenomenal. I love that Niku, again, is just so passionate about that nickname. And, you know, Kaz is kind of dismissive of it at first. But over time, it grows on him. And I love that. It's a true testament to friendship. And yeah, I just thought that was a really funny moment of the series. There are many that were missing, but that's at least one that really sticks out to me.
But also, I mean, while we're here, let's mention Bebo and Bebo's mom, two of the most iconic characters in the entire show, despite only being there for one episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, one of the best moments in the entire show. It is joy. It is purest rapture. Kisses. You know,
I use that phrase when I describe the series. This Star Wars Resistance is purest joy and purest rapture. It's amazing.
So blessed to be in a world with Resistance.
Absolutely. Well, Sarah, as we start to close out, I want to think about the lasting legacy of Resistance. And, you know, again, it's been almost 2 years since the series has ended. This is the second annual Remembering Resistance event. We will have it again next year, most likely. It's something that we like to do annually because I think the more that we remember the show and bring new fans on board, it's so exciting to see people on Twitter this weekend going, maybe I'll give it a shot, you know? And that's like, I'm like, yes. And there is like a new joy in discovering Star Wars and giving it a chance and finding out it is something that you do love. And I know we hinted at earlier some of our hopes for the return of these characters in future stories, and I would love to see them return in some form or fashion. I do think publishing and TV is probably the best form or medium for them to come back in. My hope, one of my big like tinfoil hat hopes, is Vanessa Doza is a part of Rangers of the New Republic. I hope. Probably not going to happen, but I hope. If that show still happens, I hope she is one of the pilots. I want that show, like my really like out there theory is Rangers of the New Republic is just a show about moms.
Oh my God. The way that I would be like, you know, when the whole Disney Investor Day thing was happening and they were all announcing all these Mando spinoff shows, and I was like, I don't know how this is going for me as a fan, but if it was a mom's show, the way I would be like, this is exactly the content I've been waiting for this entire time. I've, you know, like this is perfect. I was never, you know, I was never not on board. Yeah. I've been a fan of, you know, like the way I would flip the script. And I don't say I would lie about what I felt about it before, but the way that would be for me is what I'm getting at.
I mean, you could have Iden, you could have Hera, you could have Vanessa, you could have a bunch of Star Wars moms. Leia is involved somehow. Like,
mother-daughter, even though, you know, this doesn't go so well for one of them in the end. Iden Zay.
Yeah.
R.I.P. to like.
I'm just saying.
Them.
Make Rangers of the New Republic a show about space bombs flying their spaceships. That's all I'm saying.
Disney, you don't even need to give us credit for that one.
Yeah, just do it. Like, everybody would love that show. And, you know, so let's just do it. That's one of my hopes, though.
Yeah.
And I am excited, like you said, to return to the sequel trilogy era at some point. I think maybe a break is needed, but like once we do return, it's going to be like a Chewie we're home moment for so many fans who were that were introduced to Star Wars through the sequel trilogy. That's going to be a really special moment when we finally get that sort of content. And I hope that the Resistance crew is involved in it somehow. Even if they're in the background, even if Chopper and Rogue One, I can go, oh my God, look, it's Chopper. He went for like 2 seconds. Mom, look, Mom. She's like, I don't even know who that is. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Look. Good time.
Yeah.
What are your hopes for the legacy of Resistance and how it could show up?
I hope that people continue to find Resistance. It's easier than ever to find it. It's on Disney Plus. If you have a Disney Plus subscription, it's right alongside all the new shows you're watching and the movies you're paying $30 for, to watch at home. So it's there and it's ready and waiting for you. So I hope people continue to find it. And I hope that new generations of young people specifically continue to find it, who may have not been able to experience it when it was on TV. I also very selfishly hope that these characters continue to get mentions and roles to play in other Star Wars storytelling. We know that Captain Doza has a really fascinating backstory. We know that Niku has a really fascinating backstory. We know that Kaz has a fascinating backstory. He's from Hosnian Prime.
Mm-hmm.
We know that these characters truly do have full lives outside of just the 2 seasons of this show. And I want to see that in some way, shape, or form. And I hope that down the line we do get to see that, and that the voice actors that were a part of it to begin with continue to be a part of it, because it's clear that they really enjoyed, sharing their character with the world. So that's my selfish hope, that we continue to see their stories play out, because as a Star Wars fan, I think the coolest thing is when the Star Wars we watch has ripple effects in other stories.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think there is a space for these characters in Star Wars, and it's only a matter of time. I'm hopeful that it will happen, and I kind of have to have hope that it will happen at some point, because if Maul can come back and if somehow Palpatine can return, I think we can bring Niku in for a post-Tross story or something or another, right? I mean, it's very easy to do that. And Lucasfilm, I think, has hopefully seen the love for the show, especially with events like Remembering Resistance Day. And that's the importance, to show that people still care about these characters and the legacy of the show. It's why Rebels Remembered is a thing as well. It's another day during the year where we can remember it. I mean, Clone Wars Saved, that was such a thing for a long time, and Filoni went back and finished off the series. Not to say that our hope is bring back season 3, save it. But all we want is these characters to keep living and breathing within the sandbox, because they do serve a purpose, and a wonderful purpose it is. So Sarah, as we start to close out this episode, again, today is Remembering Resistance Day. And for all of you Resistance fans out there, if you're wondering how you can join in on the fun, just remember to keep the conversation alive. Use the hashtag Remembering Resistance, not only today, but every day. If you have a memory or a piece of art or a podcast episode that you want to share next month or the month after, by all means do it. And continue sharing your love, because you just never know what the future holds for Star Wars Resistance. And I'm just so happy, Sarah, that we got to talk about this today. And
me too.
Another Remembering Resistance Day in the books. And here's to next year for our 3rd annual.
As Obi-Wan would say, as he runs his fingers through his hair, another happy landing.
Well, Sarah, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. But for all of you listening, if you want to see more about Remembering Resistance on your timeline today, make sure you're following Friends of the Force on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find Sarah and I on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Goodreads as well for our personal opinions about Star Wars and all other things. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review if you could, because it helps other people find the show and join the Star Wars discussion. And also make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so all of our latest episodes drop into your podcast feed. If this is your first time listening to the show, we are big High Republic fans. We love Resistance. We love the prequels. All those sorts of things you can expect from us in the months ahead.
We also have a Patreon where tiers start at just $1, where we get special things, such as today, our patrons are getting a comics episode, again, about those 2 Star Wars adventure comics that feature Star Wars Resistance characters and storylines. And we are so, so grateful for our patrons because they help us keep the show going and help us bring Remembering Resistance to you for the past 2 years. So, and they are Amy, Anna, Brian, Cheryl, Deborah, Donnie, Elegy, Jesse, Jen, Knights of Ren, Huang, Levi, Lindsay, Lucy, Marie Claire, Neil, Rachel, Sarah, Saber Bouquet, Skytalkers, Travis, and T. Thank you again and happy Remembering Resistance Day.
Yes, thank you all for celebrating with us this year. It was such a special event once again, and we cannot wait until next year. So, until next time, everybody, Team Colossus out.